Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog Arichcomiclife. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 800 comedians and counting over the last 46 years. My guest today is the brilliant Mark Watson. Yes! Hello! How are you?
All right, thanks Richard, and thank you for that enormous one-man welcome.
It's my pleasure. I'm so pleased to be chatting to you today because you are one of my favourite comedians. I've been watching your act for the years and years, and it just gets better and better as I watch it.
Thank you. That 46 years is quite a stat, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. My first ever gig was Les Dawson in 1977. And in the same year I saw Tommy Cooper. So
that's before I was born in both cases. Not bad.
Right. Anyway, never mind that. Let's go on to your comedy career. We'll go right back to the start. And please, can you tell me, how did you become a comedian in the first place?
Well, I've been asked this a few times, and I've never really answered it satisfactorily because it wasn't a plan really or anything that I did on purpose. I did sort of sketches and stuff like that at university, and I'd done public speaking and debating and that sort of thing at school. And the way I did get into doing a first gig was quite strange. There was a jongleurs night, like a night of professional comics came to town,
right? And
they were meant to be on at our college, and one of the comedians pulled out a couple of nights before, and just because I was known to have done, I really was a very small amount of sketch comedy at the time. The organizer, the student panicking, trying to find another comic, asked me if I wanted to do sort of a 10-minute slot. I've never done stand-up before at all, but I knew it was sort of obviously the definition of a home crowd because they'd all be. So my set was all just jokes about the college, as far as I can remember. I don't remember anything. But it was a real kind of. And I think if it had gone badly, almost certainly I'd never have gone back to it because those first few gigs you're incredibly vulnerable. But as it happens, that very first gig was in front of, if not friends, at least kind of peers, and also had the advantage of coming in as a hero because it's like someone's dropped out, but this guy from your very own corridor has stepped in, so I couldn't really lose that gig. And it gave me a big head start in terms of confidence, and so that went really well, obviously in the circumstances, and that was enough to give me the taste of thinking being on your own on stage is quite exciting.
What sort of year are we talking here then?
This is 2001, I think,
right.
And my final year at university, and the following year, 2002, I entered open mic competitions and that sort of thing.
Right. So when you started, were you doing like 5-minute spots in pubs to gain experience and inviting friends along? Yeah.
I think it's almost the only way you can do it.
Yeah.
I was doing 5 minutes in pubs and clubs and stuff like that, but I was generally not inviting friends along very much because I tried to, when you don't know if it's going to work out, I try to keep it as secret as possible. These days, there's a real culture of, you can only get on the bill if you bring a friend and stuff like that. Bringer gigs, as they're called. But that never happened in my day. And if it had, I would have really struggled to establish myself because I would have found it very embarrassing to ask people to come along. I wouldn't know if it'd be good or if they'd have a good time. So I basically did it on the quiet, a lot of it. I mean, my then partner was doing it, but I didn't tell many people that I was doing any sort of comedy until it got to the point where I thought it was going all right, at least.
Right.
And I didn't tell my parents or anything like that for some time after that.
I'm normally the friend for a lot of comedians who are just starting out because apparently they tell me I've got a loud laugh, and so I go along and genuinely laugh if they are very good and be very polite and laugh if they're not. But you are mentor to one in particular, to my friend Vic Slayton, who I first saw at I first saw her at Birdie's comedy club doing 5 minutes there, and I've watched her develop quite a bit. I think she's one of the best new comedians. Did you have a mentor when you started out?
Well, no, the honest answer is not really. And also, it's been sort of quite generous to say that I'm a mentor to her. What I did do was give her the opportunity to be in my 24-hour show for her first ever gig, which is not something that not an opportunity that I had in my time. No, right. I didn't really have a figure at all in my because I wasn't coming from a backdrop of knowing much about comedy at all. I came into it by I did well in a couple of competitions and stuff like that. So when I was starting out, I was fortunate to get kind of support slots for people like Lee Mack and Dara Bray, and right. I was on with some very good people who I learned a lot from. But there was not one figure that told me this is what you do, this is how you go about it. Because, and I do think I've said this before, but I think that these days comedians are much more like young up and coming comedians are much more strategic in this way. They do have someone advising them. They know, or at least some of them, they know what the clubs are and the gigs, and there's a career path now that's established. In my time, that wasn't really, certainly for me, there wasn't a culture. I was making it up as I went along, basically, wow. And I just cobbled together what I could work out of the circuit by coming down to London, doing gigs, and I wasn't even trying to network officially or make contacts. I just literally took all the advice I could every time I went to a gig and did it. If someone said that went well, you were good, or whatever, I would just say, right, what the hell do I do next? And gradually, I just grew. Again, this would be different now because you'd have chortle. There was chortle, to be fair, but there wasn't. The internet culture wasn't the same. So now you probably can work out quite quickly what the lie of the land is with comedy and what you should be doing. Plus, you can at the press of a button, you can watch as much stand-up as you want. But I was just coming through in a period where it was the cusp of all this. So you could watch stand-up, you could find out information, but you're still buying a magazine or buying a DVD. It was a very analog world compared with what we've got now.
What I like about you as a comedian and your act is your passion for the craft. You're very, very supportive of other comics, and whenever I've seen you on stage, you're always very enthusiastic and determined to make the audience laugh, which is a great quality to have, I think.
Well, I certainly do like to encourage a sense of community. I like to encourage other comedians because I feel like we're all in it together in a way, and one person being successful doesn't have to diminish you. I say that a lot. It's easy when you're young as a comedian to look on everyone as a threat and compare yourself to other people, and why is he doing this and she doing that? And at my sort of age, you start thinking, well, it's all right, like everyone else will get where they're going to go regardless, and none of that really impacts on you as much as you think. And in terms of the audience, you're right as well. I feel like you kind of you can either approach it as a kind of fight, as a battle of wits with an audience, or what I prefer to do is just see them as potential friends. And that's not to say I won't police it and put people in their place if I have to. I have had to do that plenty of times with gigs, but my starting point is always, it would be good if all the acts had a good gig and all the audience had a good time, and that doesn't seem impossible because we're all in that room wanting it to go well. So it doesn't have to turn into a fight. It can do for loads of reasons, but if you can see it as just, some comedians, almost their starting point is that they've got to battle against the crowd, and that's understandable because those are the conditions that a lot of us learn our trade in, but it doesn't need to be like that always, not as you go on further into your career.
I can never understand why folk go not to enjoy a comedy night. I absolutely love to go. I'm very, very, very enthusiastic about going, and we're not here to hear heckling or anything like that. We're here to hear what the comedian has to say, and it's a very good sounding board as well as a funny night to listen to what they have to come across to an audience.
Yeah, I mean, you know, no one really knows what motivates. Well, I suppose there are some things that are obvious. Some people are just obviously drunk and they want to be involved, and we've all seen that.
Yeah.
Some people, I think, often, especially men, do get kind of slightly threatened by not being the centre of attention, or there's a particular type of guy that thinks, oh, I want to do this guy down. And then there's also a culture of just like, because people have heard the stand-up has heckling and there's a blood sport, and there's, you know, some people want to live up to that. They're coming out thinking, oh, I hope there's a bit of heckling, I hope there's a bit of argy-bargy. And that mentality was very much the case in the 90s. And, you know, when I was starting out even, there was this, some people were showing up because they wanted it to turn not even nasty, but they looked forward to the the cut and thrust. If you know, I can see that, because there is something fun about watching a performer kind of do battle with an audience, battle of wits in that way. But for me, it was never about that, and I like the fact that I live in a climate where stand-up is a bit less gladiatorial, because I think there's enough fighting, there's enough of that in life, really.
Very much so, I totally agree.
Ideally, people are coming to a comedy show to get away from the stress and strain of life, not to have a new set of stresses put on them.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. Before you go on stage, do you suffer from any nerves at all? And if so, how do you cope with them?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I was earlier on, especially when I used to do telly and stuff, and it was very early days for me, I definitely found it very nerve-wracking. And these days, I mean, there's still nerves there. I sort of feel like if you didn't have that at all, there'd be something odd about it. I wouldn't want to be someone that was doing it dispassionately. I wouldn't want to feel like I wasn't emotionally nervous. So I'm happy with some nerves, you know. I mean, the difference is that as you get older, I think you learn, like with anything, like with sport or any form of performance or anything, I think you just learn how to incorporate those into your performance. So, you know, if I'm nervous, and also there's nervous in a good way, is like ready to perform, nervous energy fizzing through you, adrenaline, you're pumped, that's good. I think that's a good mentality for performance. Nerves where you're throwing up before you go on stage and you're worried about it all day, that's probably bad, and you do need to progress beyond that as a live performer. But the sort of nerves nerves is not even quite the right word. The sort of nervous anticipation that I feel now is almost purely positive, because it just gets me kind of pumped to do it, and the audience senses that energy. I think what's different is, as you get older and more experienced, you learn how to feel those nerves as a sort of motivating force, and you incorporate it, and also you have that bedrock of experience, so you can say to yourself, well, I know I'm good enough, I've done this before, it's worked before, so I've got various things I can do. They might like it or they might not, but I know that I have entertained people successfully before. Whereas when you're starting out, those first couple of years, if the crowd isn't immediately into it, you haven't built up that reservoir of confidence, so you're just there thinking, you feel at the mercy of the audience. But if you're my sort of age and experience, you don't really feel at the mercy of the audience. You still know they're unpredictable, they might not like you, they might do anything, but you know you have got the goods in some way. You must have to have been going this long. So your mentality is more, well, I'll do my best here and you can take it or leave it. But I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I always go all out to please a crowd. But if I don't please them, I don't take it personally as I used to, maybe.
The reason why I asked the question was, other than this blog, the most creative thing I've ever done was I've written a script which initially was for the Edinburgh Fringe. It was a half-hour play. It's called The Applicant, and me and my friend put it on stage, and we raised a lot of money for comic relief. This was not in Edinburgh, this was in London. And the play's basically about me, who comes down from Carlisle to London, has a very successful girlfriend, but I can't get a job. I have a series of interviews, and each scene was the first scene was me in the waiting room, and then it was the interview, and it built up. And as I ran out, I was very nervous, and I started talking to the crowd, and so I wrote these great long monologues to try and set the scene of the play, and I ran out on the first day I did it, and I forgot it.
Yeah.
So it was I was like a rabbit in headlights, and I thought, I don't know whether I could do this again, but we did 3 of them, and it got better as it went along. So what I'm trying to say is, all of you have got my utmost praise for going out there and doing it, because it must be the best feeling in the world, obviously, to get laughs, but to take control of a room and get bigger laughs must be amazing.
Well, it is. I suppose the difference between stand-up and anything, any sort of acting or being a play or doing dramatic, all that stuff, is that obviously as a stand-up you can be thinking on your feet a bit and be, no one knows exactly what you're trying to do, so you can dry up to some extent and you're still fine. I've always thought that is, I find it much scarier to do an actual a play, a proper big play with a part to learn, because if you go blank there, you are in trouble. One of the blessings
and I was.
And you were, yeah. And that's like, in the same way that people look at stand-ups and say, I could do that. I often look at people doing enormous, substantial stage parts and think, I wouldn't fancy doing that, because there's no real. You've either got the lines in there or you haven't.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that attracted me to stand-up, really, that it isn't acting, it's not even sketch acting, it's a live event, and you live or die by how well things are going in the moment. So if the stuff that you prepared isn't working, or you can't remember it or whatever, there is still always the option of a plan B where you can still get out of jail. It's about, I think, just temperamentally, I'd rather be relying on my wits in the moment.
Yeah.
Than trying to learn and recite a great long thing. And also in plays, you're so responsible to the other cast, of course. Like if you mess it up in a play, then there's 6 people that are in trouble. Or I've always liked it about stand-up that if it goes well, the praise is yours, and if it goes badly, it's yours alone. But either way, you haven't let anyone else down. It is.
Yeah.
It can be quite a lonely feeling, but I think I'd rather, I'd rather take it on my own and feel self-reliant in that way, rather than have a director in the room that's like, this is my work, it's the production manager's work, it's this. With a play, there's about 25 people riding on me, and that's too much for me. If I have a bad gig, it's really, the audience may be a bit disappointed, but it's only really me that gets hurt, and I think I prefer it that way.
How do you remember all your routines? Do you have a way of remembering them?
What I tend to do is, if I'm doing a show, like a full-length festival show or something, I'll tend to try to construct it in a way where one thing leads on from another. So there's a logic to it. So you think, I'm talking about dogs, must be time for this bit about whatever, cats. I'm caricaturing my actor bit here. But also, I'm sort of fortunate that my style, again, is quite rambling, and so it lends itself to telling a story with a bit of room around it. So you've still got to hit the punchlines, you've got to be funny, and there's a precision to it, to the task. But if I lose my way or say something wrong, or then people kind of expect me to do that and circle back to it. I think again, the comedians I look at and think, how are you doing that, are ones where it's one-liners and there's 4 dozen of them in a row, and if you don't remember word for word every one of those, I suppose you can skip between them and stuff like that. But that I would find difficult. One of the reasons that it works for me, again, is that I do have my routines I've got, and if I'm doing a proper theatre show or Edinburgh Fringe or whatever, they're trying to deliver pretty much the same show night on night. But I also know that I don't have to do that. Whereas if your thing is gags, then you can still change the show, but you've got to hit so many points with such precision. So basically, I've engineered a style of comedy where I can be quite unprofessional, and it can still work.
I don't agree with you being unprofessional. I think you're very professional.
Well, that's probably doing myself down a bit, but I have a style which lends itself going all over the place a bit, and people, and then most of the comedians I like are, I mean, nothing wrong with that kind of. Well, there's loads of comedians I like Gary Delaney, Tim Vine. You do short form, just gags, and I really admire it. But most of the comedians, I actually, Milton's one of my favourites in particular. But most of the comedians that are the ones I really enjoy watching most are people who appear to just go off, and you're, especially watching it as a comedian, you're aware that there's a plan and that there's points they're going to get back to. But you're swept along in the ride. You can't tell 100% if they know what the hell is happening. I relish that.
I love that as well, because it's also very original. You don't know what's coming next, and then when they link it all together, it's just hilarious. It's really good. You won the Daily Telegraph Open Mic competition in 2002, and the first ever panel prize for the If Comedies in 2006. Congratulations! Yes. Describe the experience of entering a competition. Do you think competitions are good? What's your view of them?
Obviously, for me, it was pretty good at the time. I had very little experience or knowledge of the game, and winning a competition, the Telegraph one, did open the doors for me to do a lot. Well, not actually. I was going to say a lot of stuff. What it gave me was a small springboard into the world of comedy and the opportunity to say, "Can I have a gig at your club?" or stuff like that. It was actually quite small scale. I think one of the things that people misunderstand about competitions is there is this feeling that if you win it, you're going to be a global star the next day, and if you don't win, then you're screwed. And actually, they're less important than they feel at the time, I think. But I'm not opposed to them as a principle. I've done quite a lot of hosting and judging and stuff of competitions, and I think that they're a really useful way of encouraging you to hone your 5 minutes or however long it is. Practice they're very good for focusing, I think, competitions, because you've got to have an act that's good. But they should not be seen as, you certainly shouldn't get discouraged if you don't win them, nor should you get cocky if you do, because some people's acts just lend themselves very well to competitions. I've seen lots of people win. Again, I've hosted quite a lot of them, the BBC one, the Chortle one, both of those a number of years running, and I've seen quite a few people win competitions who the act is great, the 5 minutes is great, but you're watching it thinking, yeah, but what now? The whole act is just like, you've got a block and it's full of cheese, or it's like really, really funny, but it can't be scaled up to whereas I've also seen people who are much more of a conventional comic, and that's not to say it's not good to be unconventional. I'm just saying that often competitions are won by the most memorable or weird act. It just lands in the moment, and people can sometimes get overlooked if they just do a pretty decent job. But there's nothing wrong with that. I've seen people walk away discouraged from not even the finals, the heats, the semis. But I've thought to myself, and I try to say to them, actually, though, you're going to be fine, because you are really good at the nuts and bolts of it. It's just you've been beaten by this guy that came on dressed as a dolphin, because in a 5 minute setting, of course, that's what people want. So I think competitions are useful, good discipline, you learn a lot from them, but they can give you an illusion, both positive and negative, of where you're at. They matter less than they feel as if they will. And they reward weirdness, which is good, because hopefully comedy rewards weirdness. But me, even when I won my one, I had a great 5 minutes. I had a very good competition 5, and I did well in a number of competitions, but that was all I had. I had 5 minutes and 1 second of material, and the 1 second was playing with the crowd. So when I had to start doing 10s and then quite quickly 20s in clubs, I was not prepared for it. So that's the other thing. It's good to have a set which really flies in competitions, but you don't want to get so good at that set that you don't make progress, you don't develop anything else. minutes. You can with 20. Opens up for you in comedy. But some people never get to that stage because they've got a very short set, which is brilliant, and they'll never leave it. They'll never go beyond that comfort zone.
At what point, this is not listed on the question sheet that I've got, but I wanted to ask you, was there a point where you thought, this is my career, I can do this, I think I can do this well?
Well, it's very odd looking back to try and work out.
Yeah.
It's hard to make sense of things in retrospect, but I think the answer is maybe, well, when I did my first solo Edinburgh show, it was 2005, and some sort of 3 solid years of touring clubs, and in those clubs, in those gigs, there's never that much validation, because even if you storm it, no one really knows who you are. They might come up to you after and say, "Oh, look you up," but you don't really have a presence. You're just a guy that did a good. The audience go home, they forget maybe. Whereas that first time I did Edinburgh, I'm selling tickets. People queuing. They've bought tickets to watch you specifically. There are posters with your name on. You're getting reviewed. I think that was it. I think that first Edinburgh, which went well for me because I put a lot of work into the show, and I think that was when I started to think, well, okay, there is a world in which this can be a thing that I do. And then the following year I went to Melbourne as a result of that Edinburgh show, and again you're in a different country and people are paying to watch you, and so I think it was that. I think comedy festivals gave me that, because as long as you're a club comic, you can be very good at it, but you are quite disposable. There's another guy comes on, and another girl, woman comes on, everyone's good.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not doing that down. It's a real important craft of being a club comic. But for me, when I felt like I have a place in this kind of firmament, in this scheme of things, was when I had a festival show and could say, this is my show. There might only be 30 people, but they've deliberately come to see me.
Was your first Edinburgh Fringe in what year was your first Fringe?
That was 2005, and then I had already been to Fringe a couple of years, but I'd done the 24-hour show that I did for the first time was 2004, and even before that I had done a couple of years apprenticeship. That's one of the reasons why I have the relationship I do with the Fringe, because I've been going as a fan even before as a comedian. But 2005 was my first proper year there.
Wow.
And 2006 was as in solo show. So I've done, it would have been 20 years. It is 20 years consecutive Edinburghs, and last year, had it taken place, would have been the
21st.
Yeah.
That's the same year I first went to Edinburgh, 2005.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, if I go here, I know I want to go there, but I will go for the rest of my life, because I know I'm going to love it. And when I stepped off the train at the Haymarket, not the Haymarket, at Waverley, the atmosphere just hit you, and I thought, this is incredible. And I've been going every year since, up until of course last year, and it's my holiday. I go for a week, normally the middle week, and I see about 50 shows in a week. I'm absolutely shattered by the time I come back. But it's the most incredible thing. And let me just I hope you don't mind, but I want to just let you know how many shows I've seen by you. I've seen your imaginatively titled solo shows, okay? I'm worried that I'm starting to hate almost everything in the world in 2006. Do I Know You in 2010, The Information in 2012, Flaws in 2014, You Can Almost Win in 2018, and I appreciate you coming to this, and let's hope for the best in 2019, all at the Edinburgh Fringe. The last one in particular, you did some of your set in the audience, which was incredible. You actually went into the audience and started chatting to them at the start.
Yes, I've done that once or twice in the time. The reason that's called I appreciate you coming to this, and let's hope for the best. Those sort of work in progress type shows, I do have a culture of basically trying to give them the most defeatist titles possible, lowering people's expectations. Yeah.
When I plan the Fringe, that my friends who I go along with, I always do a little spreadsheet, and it's always very meticulous and everything. And whenever your name is at Edinburgh, I always make a point of seeing you, because you are what I love about your shows is that there's always a point to them. You're very intelligent as well as very funny with your views, and the audience are really made to listen to what you have to say, which is half of it, I think.
Yeah, I think a nice thing about the Edinburgh format, or any festival format, is that you do have a bit longer with an audience. You've got that hour. You don't have to be banging jokes through the whole time. I still try and maintain as high a hit rate as I can, but there is also an understanding that that you're going to develop stuff, that you're going to chat a bit, that there's kind of elbow room in a 1 hour show, and that's why comedians like me are drawn to the Fringe, I think, because you can get as good as you want as a club comic, but you're doing 20-30 minute maybe headlines, or even more, but you still haven't got the relationship with the audience that you have over 1 hour. And that's why, for someone like me, the festival format is really valuable, because you've got a relationship with an audience which goes that bit deeper, and you can still be as funny as you want, but you have the opportunity to chat about more substantial stuff as well.
From the shows that I've listed, can you tell me about your writing process and where you get your ideas from for creating a new show?
Well, like most stand-ups, I think the ideas come from just being on your feet, going around, observing stuff, and trying to work out how to talk about them. And the way I write is not that structured. A lot of it's weird, really, because I do write books and stuff, and there are areas of my life in which I'm quite methodical about writing. But stand-up itself isn't really one of them. I tend to develop shows by just doing work in progresses, like the one you saw in the Fringe. In 2019, basically putting the show on its feet as much as I can, and finding out where the funny stuff is kind of as I go along, which is it's a time-consuming way to do it, obviously, and it involves a certain amount of trial and error. But that, for me, is the only real method that I appreciate. Or for me, it's the only way that I feel like I know what I'm doing. Because if I were to write a huge volume of stuff, I could write as much stuff as I wanted on paper, but I wouldn't be confident that any of it was funny. Until it's passed that test of being in front of an audience. So it's only then, really, that you know. And then that's why, a lot of what I'd call my writing process isn't really writing. It's about, it is writing, but it's about extemporizing. It's about being in front of an audience and feeling the show to come together in that moment, I think, live, as it were.
So you're also very good at bantering with an audience. This is what you're trying to say. It's like, if you, I'm guessing, but if you get the audience on your side because you're chatting to them at the start, you can then say really whatever you like because they're on your side and you're away with the theme of your show.
Yeah, I think that's right. I certainly try to establish as much trust with an audience as I can, as early as I can, so that then, as you say, you can take them wherever you want them. And that's why, again, for me, it would never work to go out and be on the front foot attacking the audience, because ultimately, especially with a festival show, I want them to come with me in whatever direction I want to go in. So it makes sense for all of us to be in that complicity from the start, if I can. And again, some gigs aren't like that. Some audiences, you just got to get at them. But if I can, and the majority of festival shows are like this, I will always try and make it create an atmosphere where people feel like I'm going to have a good time. It won't be at my own expense mostly, and everyone here wants the same thing. If you can establish that in the first few minutes, then, like you say, the audience are on your side and they're going to want to go have fun with you, which is what it's all about, you'd think.
One of your greatest ideas was your 24-hour marathon shows, which have become infamous at the Fringe and also online as well. Can you tell me how they came about?
Well, when I first went to Edinburgh, as we've said, it is quite a unique atmosphere. And one of the things that I really responded to there was this sense, as you say, that there's a real buzz about everything. And you can kind of do whatever you want there. It's a place where you are encouraged to experiment as a comedian, and so I mentally joined in with that process, and I thought I had the idea. It was a stupid idea, kind of what felt like on the verge of being an untenable idea, which is, could you do a show for 24 hours? At this point, I had no material. I hadn't been doing, I had like 20 minutes. But it wasn't about that. It was like, could someone create an event which went for that long and which was a festival talking point? No, actually, I wasn't even thinking in terms of talking point. I had no idea whether anyone would do it or not. It was as simple as thinking, in a festival like this that's famed for experimentation, it would be a great place to try and do something mad like a 24-hour show.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, no one has done that, so why don't I try and do that? And it wasn't much more sophisticated than that, really. And then it became a big thing, and it became a tradition and all this. But the starting point was just, this would be a cool idea. No one seems to be doing it. Why don't I try and do it? And that same spirit has inspired a lot of the best stuff in Edinburgh. I think you see an idea. You almost get paranoid that someone else must have done it. You find out they haven't, and you think, right, well, before they do, I'll do it.
Let me have a go and do it. And by God, it's a success, because the online ones as well. You've done 2 What's On-a-thons, and there's one more coming up in May, the May Bank Holiday. Is that right?
Well, it's sooner than that. In fact, it's this weekend.
Oh, it's this coming weekend, the Easter weekend, right?
The Easter weekend, because it's for Melbourne Festival, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, online is a different way of doing it. It's obviously slightly more, you don't get the instant response of an audience, but I've enjoyed doing it online because in a lot of ways these shows are about community, and so in a way this is the perfect forum for it, really, because far more people can get involved online than they ever would have done.
Yeah.
Festival, yeah.
Well, you're doing a great thing, my friend, because I've thoroughly enjoyed watching them online, and as well as Edinburgh. You're also a brilliant novelist. What inspired you to write a book?
Well, that was probably what I wanted before I was a comedian, really. As a kid, I was always about writing. I saw myself as, a future author, and those ambitions have been much more low-key over the years, because comedy, you do get recognition quite quickly, or you can at least, whereas books go under the radar. And so I've just been quietly chipping away at that for a long time. And, the profile that I've been lucky enough to get as a comedian partly paves the way for me to be able to write books and stuff like that. But I see them both as half of what I do, really. It's never been about, some comedians do just kind of branch off sideways into writing books because they feel like it's about time I gave that a go. Writing books has always been quite to the fore in terms of what I wanted to do. Right.
Well, this blog was originally a book, but I couldn't afford the publishing rights, so I thought, turn it into a blog, and for me, I think a blog is much more immediate, so you can branch out and do a lot of things. But I'd still like to get this published at some point, because to have your name in print, it means that you've left something behind for future generations, and at a point in your life and everything. I think it's fascinating.
It's a nice feeling, definitely. Stand-up does come and go a bit, I suppose, and those nights in clubs and all those things, it is slightly ephemeral. It's you're chasing the laughs, all this sort of thing. So there is a definite satisfaction in holding something in your hands and saying, I wrote this, I've made a thing like that.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good. This past 18 months, or however long it's been, has been awful. Really horrible times, obviously. How have you found online gigs as opposed to live stand-up? You've seemed to embrace online shows with your 24-hour marathons, but do you prefer online to live stand-up?
No, I wouldn't say I prefer it, but I do think that it's been more fun than some people thought, including me. And no one knew what it was going to be like when we started gigs on Zoom and all the rest of it. And I've and some people have never gone back to it. They basically maintain that it's just not the same and it doesn't work. I found it definitely can work, and I've done lots of stuff that I think, hopefully proves that. I've seen lots of other people do it successfully. But what you do miss is the sense of community, I suppose. Again, the physical, well, not physical contact. I'm not normally grabbing audience members out, not Jason Byrne, but the sense that you've all converged on one building, and the atmosphere, that like kind of taut atmosphere that you get waiting for the comedian to come on, and all that, the proximity to the front row, the things that make live performance really exciting are absent from this. So I definitely miss that, like I think every live comedian working out there. But I do take comfort from the fact that when I'm doing a live show on Zoom or something, there might be a couple of hundred people. Some of them would never have got to an in real life show. The chat box it builds community. There are certain advantages. I'd never go so far as to say that I prefer it, but I do think that we've, or at least those of us that have done this sort of gig, have learned lessons about how it's still possible to create that atmosphere, and that's got to be better than nothing, especially because, like I say, some people can't get to live gigs regularly in the real world, so that audience is out there, and you might as well do your best to meet them halfway.
I totally agree with you, because for me, if I didn't have if I didn't have online comedy, I don't know how I'd have got through lockdown. I think it's a brilliant substitution, but I so miss going to a live gig. When the online comedy started, there was no audio, hardly any audio, so I would just sit here laughing at four walls, and I thought I was going to be taken away. But but once the audio started opening up, and there was a little front row, they were doing their best to try and get the atmosphere, but you can't get it. You can't beat live for me. The very fact of going to the pub, having a few drinks with your friends, and then going to a comedy show, as you say, it just takes, you're there in the moment, those group of people in that room, and anything can happen, and that's the wonderful thing about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And obviously very much looking forward to getting back to that.
Sure. Have you done any gigs? Have you done any outdoor gigs? You did a few, didn't you? My company put on some driving gigs in the summer, and I did various other ones like that. And again, there's a lot to be said for it. You're still all sharing an experience. You're still in this live environment. It's exciting. Once again, there are things you miss. You can't replace the feeling of being under a low roof or in a basement, or those rooms that really lend themselves to comedy, the proximity with other people and that atmosphere. You don't get that in a field. But again, if that's all you got, you can make it work. You can make it atmospheric. And again, I think that's been one of the lessons of this whole year and a bit, is that if you have to, you can make comedy happen in anywhere, in any circumstances. It's just some of them are definitely much more desirable than others. Yes. I'm hoping it's going to come back very, very soon. I'm sure it will. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present? Do you have many? Do you have any? Do you look to them?
I don't have loads at past, because when I was growing up, there weren't many stand-ups on the TV. There wasn't a huge culture of it, and so the stuff that I was watching as a kid was like the Simpsons and the Fast Show, and it was sketch shows more. There were very few stand-ups that I regarded as like people I looked up to, not because I was any sort of arrogant or something, but I just didn't know many stand-ups. And then when I came to it in my 20s, as I say, I was watching people like Dara or Chris Addison, Paul Foot. Natalie Haynes, I think. These are all people that I supported, Lee Max and so I served that kind of apprenticeship with them, and that's continued to be the case these days. There's people like Tim Kay, obviously, and
brilliant.
A lot of the people that I admire most in comedy have been people that I've worked with or been up close with and seen their craft. And so it's not just about watching a DVD or listening to routines and stuff. I've been lucky to often be on bills with people that I think are amazing, and so learned in the most direct way possible by actually watching what they do.
And like me, either before you were a comedian or when you were a comedian, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
Well, I don't go to many clubs and things these days, but certainly in Edinburgh, I will go to as much stuff as I can. I probably wouldn't rack up 50 in a week or whatever you said.
That's just bonkers.
Well, it is, but I do get the mentality because I'm always looking to see as many as I can. And over the course of the month of the Fringe, I will see a lot of stuff because I think it's important to see what other people are up to and get a sense of where the comedy scene is, but also because I like it. I like that feeling. I like being inspired by younger people and newer.
Yeah, of course.
It's a great thing about the Fringe is that there are so many different approaches. You'll see people that have just started out doing stuff that you've never would have thought of yourself. So I like that. I think it's an important bit of the Fringe is learning from other people and being part of that. And I love that. When I'm up in Edinburgh, I'm not just looking, or any comedy festival, it's not just about doing my own show. I want to see what other people are doing and learn from that and just be entertained by them and be part of that whole community.
I
probably should go on a set not before too long, if that's all right.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I was just going to say we are nearly done.
Sure.
I was just going to say the reason why I asked those two questions is there's a section in my blog called The Ones That Got Away, and I've written 25 comedians who have either passed on or I haven't had a chance to see. But for me, of course, every one of them has loads of memories, and it's really good to find out from the comedians who their favourite ones are. Just before we go, and genuinely I could talk to you all night, I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thanks, Richard.
Is there anything else you would like to say? Is where people can find you on social media? Have you got any online gigs coming up? Are you writing any more books?
Well, the quickest answer is to look on Twitter, and everything I do is there basically in some form. There will be more books. I'm doing a lot of online stuff still, and then pretty soon I'll be doing some more driving gigs, and then eventually start actually touring again. And I say eventually, it's not all that far away. I'm putting shows on sale now for sort of September onwards. But yeah, follow me on Twitter or such like, or I've got a website. You'll find me, and I will basically stay very active. All of us have been so pent up for ages. We're all desperate.
Oh, it's horrible, isn't it? Yeah,
like most comedians, I'm going to be very, very active as soon as the opportunities are there, which they nearly are now. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well, I'm going to be first in the queue to see you, my friend, because I think you're a great comedian and you've made me laugh so much over the years. I just want to thank you so much for your time today, and I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks very much, and let me know when it comes out, and I'll thank you very much.
All the best to you, my friend.
Cheers, Richard.